Hi, I am Almitra and I'm going to tell you a little short and big story in parts. This is the first part, and the name of the story is A Whimsical Child. This is the first part. Julio was the most desired child in the world. His mother had wanted to have a child all his life, but unfortunately, life did not want to give her a child. She had married a 14 years old to a man much older than her. The man was almost 60 years old when he married with that poor creature. The man, Camilo, wasn't in love with Stephanie, Julio's mother, but married Stephanie just to keep up appearances. Camilo felt attracted to another man, Eduardo, a young man 15 years younger than him, but still much older than Stephanie. So, when they married, Camilo proposed to Stephanie to have separate rooms, for which the girl gladly accepted. What surprised her most was that Camilo's behaviors was not what his mother had warned her about that. Camilo was very respectful. He didn't try to get along with her. He didn't kiss her, much less touch her. Camilo was like a accommodation grandfather. Everything Stephanie wanted, Camilo granted her, with the only condition that she keep silence for the long nights that Eduardo spent at his house, and Stephanie gladly accepted. When Camilo died, 20 years later, he left his entire fortune to Stephanie for having cared for him so much and being such a good wife, and he left a little fortune for Eduardo and a house for him too. Roberto always wanted to be a father, but his father, named Roberto too, wanted other things for his son. Roberto was the Roberto sixth of his family, with a long family tradition in names and careers. All of the previous Robertos, including his father, were surgeons, so Roberto VI had to honor family traditions and become a surgeon as well. Anyone who has been close to a good surgeon knows that the preparation requires many years of study and training. At least for Roberto, his preparation ended until he was 28 years old. However, there was one other thing. To become the best surgeon, he wanted to be a heart surgeon too. So many lives passed through his life. Her father, Roberto V, decides to move his influence and get him a job at the best hospital in the country. Roberto VI seemed happy with the decision of his father and the support of his grandfather, Roberto IV. However, the heart of Roberto VI still yearned for a son. But how to have a child if he didn't not to have time for himself? He was almost 40 years old, and he was going from one operating room to another. He was so prestigious that everyone was looking for him, and when he got a day, he didn't know how to talk about anything else than work. So women were easily boring with him. He was Not ugly, but he wasn't handsome either. His demanding job did not leave him time to exercise, and he slept very little. The day that Camilo died, Roberto six was on duty. He was the one who cared for Camilo. He was a man over 18 years old with cardiorespiratory failure. Roberto six did everything in his power to save his life. But when God has marked the day of your death, there is nothing to do against it. So Camilo died in the operating room, while Stephanie and Eduardo waiting patiently in the waiting room. When people saw Camilo, Eduardo and Stephanie together, when people saw Camilo, Eduardo and Stephanie together, they thought Camilo was their father, and a very affectionate father to Eduardo. So Roberto never imagined that Stephanie was Camilo's wife until he reviewed the resume, and he realized that the one who had to pay for the hospital, the one who had to arrange the funeral, and the one who had to take care of Camilo's body was Stephanie. Roberto six discreetly called Stephanie and gave her the news. Stephanie did not understand very well. She had learned to manage her husband's money because every day he depended more on her. But she never imagined taking care of her husband's funeral because when her father and mother died 3 years earlier, it was Camilo who took over of everything. Stephanie was shocked and asked Roberto six to call Eduardo. Maybe he could help. She told Eduardo six that Roberto six that Eduardo almost lived in Camilo's room. So Roberto six, who was a very intelligent man, understood everything on the spot. But when they tried to locate Eduardo, he was already gone. Stephanie began to cry inconsolably. The man who had loved her the most and who had cared for her the most was dead. Her parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, and she had no brothers or sister. Eduardo, who was with the other Eduardo, who was with her Eduardo, who was with the other who she shared, have left too. Stephanie was alone in the world, and that loneliness got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. She only felt a black hole around her. Roberto six, when seeing that beautiful woman so innocent and defenseless, fell madly in love with her. First, he helped her find clothes to dress Camilo, helped her organize the funeral, which only he and Stephanie attended. Roberto took a vacation to help Stephanie organize her late husband's wills, and realized that Stephanie was among the 100 wealthiest women in the world. Stephanie and Roberto VI spent so much time together, it was impossible that they would not fall in love. Stephanie offered Roberto VI to stay at her place after her husband's funeral. Firstly, because she was afraid to be alone in that big house and Eduardo still did not appear. And secondly, because she liked the company of Roberto VI. Roberto VI, who lived with his parents but really lived in the hospital, gladly accepted. Stephanie gave him the guest room because she didn't know what to do with the Camilo's rooms, and she didn't know if Eduardo would return it. Stephanie cared for Roberto as she had learned to care for Camilo, with patience, affection, and great care. But she felt something else, something that made her legs tremble and caused her ribs in her stomach. She didn't take much importance and thought that she was finally pregnant, although she was still virgin. Roberto VI fell in love with that woman. He was hopeless in love with her, her curves, her well-turned body. Stephanie was not a sculpture, but she was a beautiful woman, with large breasts and large legs, with rounded bottoms that showed in the nightwear, and lips that invite Roberto VI to rest on them. One day, when Stephanie was in the kitchen preparing dinner and Roberto kept looking at her, he could only look at her. The previous afternoon, Camilo's will had been read and a private investigator had to be hired to find Eduardo, which worried Stephanie very much, despite the fact that she knew that she had the help of Roberto VI. The day in the kitchen, watching her cook as more than a month, Roberto felt his member come to life, how his penis rose and how Stephanie's body urgently called him. Roberto hugged her from behind and kissed her neck, touched her breast gently with the urgency that characterized a man in love. Stephanie was shocked. She didn't know how to react. She just felt that her legs were going to weak and that she couldn't stand up anymore. She felt that she was urinating and that her entire vagina was swollen and wet. And she started crying. She didn't know why she was crying, whether out of the fear or emotion. She didn't know why she was crying. She was just crying, but it was not a heartbreaking cry. It was a cry of relief, a cry of life. Roberto VI turning her gently, as gently toward him. She only allowed herself to be controlled by the man who had destabilized her to the extreme. Trust him and let him do with her as he pleased. Roberto VI kissed her on the mouth, so deeply, so passionately, that there was nothing to do. Stephanie's stomach moved desperately, looking for the upright member of Roberto VI. Roberto VI undressed her gently as Stephanie's body trembled at each caress, at each kiss, at each hug that brought her close to Roberto VI. When Roberto VI penetrated Stephanie on the kitchen floor, he didn't as delicate as his masculine urgency allowed him. He penetrated her so deep that Stephanie could not help but emit a little cry of pain, but it was the most delicious pain in the world. There was meaningful pain in her life. Roberto VI penetrated her and removed his member with the same urgency that penetrated her. With the beat of the sound of the coffee pot and Stephanie couldn't take it anymore. She screamed and her vagina started to contract and expand, 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 contract and expand. Stephanie was lost in Roberto's six erect penis. That body of hers that no longer belonged to her, belonged to him now. When Stephanie has her first orgasm in her life from her first sexual relationship in her life after a marriage of more than 20 years with a man who was not her husband, at that moment Stephanie woke up to the love. At that time, Roberto VI, who had some sexual adventure, ejaculated. He ejaculated into Stephanie's fertile and guarded belly, ejaculated live, and gave him up. Roberto VI's vacation with Stephanie was coming to an end, but he knew that his life with her would only begin. He whipped her vagina, filled it with his semen, very gently, dressed her again, and took her to his room.